What it do, good people? Welcome back to KDTV. I am your host, Keith Daniel, and we are living in crazy times. Do you hear me? I mean, crazy times. So, I was rolling through these YouTube streets, these internet streets, trying to find good content for me to react to and have some good dialogue and conversation about meaningful things that are going on in the world right now. And I was flabbergasted to find out that we are truly on the brink of World War III. Yep, you heard me right. We are truly on the brink of World War III. See, on November 18th of this year, our current president, President Joe Biden, gave Ukraine the green light to use long range missiles in their war against Russia. Yes, we supplied them with the missiles, but with the understanding that they would not use them. Well, last week, Joe Biden gave them a green light. Then I come to find out that Putin ain't too happy about it. And he then went on to have nuclear exercises after the long range missiles attacked his country. Now, we gotta have receipts over here because I know that y'all probably won't believe what I'm saying. And I just want to let you know that I'm just not pulling stuff out of my hind parts and just bringing it to you on this app. So I'm going to give you receipts. All right. Now, just so you don't think I'm pulling your leg, as you can see, this article comes at 2:25 p.m. Central Standard Time, November 18th, 2024. What could Ukraine strike in Russia with long range U.S. missiles? And this comes from the CNN staff. Okay? Let's read. U.S. missiles could help Ukraine strike military targets in Russia. President Joe Biden has approved the use of Army tactical missile systems, ATACMS. Like, literally, the acronym says ATACMS. The name of the missile used is basically saying attack them. I can't make this up. Weapons provided by the United States to strike inside Russia. They were previously restricted for use within Ukraine. The U.S. had already allowed limited use of high mobility artillery rocket systems, HIMARS or HIMARS. All right. Now, let's just look at this map right here. All right. What you see is Ukraine right here, which my cursor is circling. And you have Russia right here, which again, my cursor is circling. Try saying that 3 times fast. All right. Now, you have Kyiv right here. This is where the missiles are being held at in Kyiv. This blue little area right here is supposed to be the targeted point. All right? Because Ukraine has allegedly taken control of this area, which it used to be a part of Russia. As you can see here, claimed Ukrainian advance in Kursk region. All right, so they've claimed this area, Kursk. Now, here's where the issue gets sticky at, okay? This orange area right here is the range for the HIMARS. This is what the United States gave. These are the missiles the United States gave to Ukraine, but their range is only 77 kilometers. So they can't go any farther than this. All right. Now, everything within this violet cloud right here, this is the range of the ATACMS, as you can see right here. And their range is 300 kilometers. All right. Now, these red dots that you see are known Russian military objects that's in this vicinity. The triangles that you see are Russian military air bases. Now, from Kiev, these missiles, these ATACMS, can hit all of these. All right, all of these. So Russia wasn't really tripping about the HIMARS because the HIMARS can't really do anything to their defenses or their territory. But when the ATACMS got involved, that was a totally different scenario. All right, now I just want y'all to stay with me because I'm going somewhere with this, okay? Although the Biden administration has revealed scant details about its decision to greenlight Ukraine's use of long-range American-made missiles in Russia, a U.S. official told CNN the weapons are intended to be used primarily in Kursk. Really? The region of Russia where Ukraine launched this surprise counteroffensive in the summer. Remember, I told you they claimed that portion for themselves, meaning Ukraine. The Institute for the Study of War estimates that around 250 military objectives, including 17 air bases, are in the range of Ukrainian ATACMS. All right? Now, again, President Joe Biden has approved the use of Army tactical missile systems, ATACMS. Why is this a big deal? Well, I'm going to tell you why. This is a big deal because on November 18th, our president gave Ukraine the green light to strike and use those. Well, on November 19th, guess what happened? Just take a wild guess of what happened. On November 19th, Ukraine used those missiles. I can't make this up. Ukraine used those missiles November 19th. And in response to that, Vladimir Putin started nuclear exercises. Listen to what I'm saying. He started nuclear exercises, and then he lowered the nuclear threshold. Allegedly, their nuclear threshold, what is a nuclear threshold? The nuclear threshold is this. What it gonna take for them to use their nuclear weapons? Now, beforehand, it only took them being threatened with nuclear devices. And if they felt threatened with nuclear devices, Russia, at their threshold, would have the go-ahead to use their nuclear devices. Well, since these long-range missiles called the ATACMS has been used, Russia found it in their best interest to lower their nuclear threshold. And now their threshold is this. If you use conventional weapons, not nuclear, we're talking about conventional weapons. Conventional weapons, i.e., long-range missiles that we're calling ATACMS at this point, and it compromises their territory, the integrity of that territory, they have it in their right to use nuclear responses. Good people, I'm here to tell you today that that's some BS. This is my issue with all of this. Number one, President Biden, you on your way out the door. I'll say that one more time. You are on your way out the door. You have less than 90 days on the job. You headed into retirement, sir. Why in the hell would you poke the bear? No pun intended. Why in the hell would you poke the bear? Only thing you had to do was enjoy these last few days you had in the White House. Play with Commander, play fetch, throw him a ball. I mean, enjoy your last few days as being the sitting president. This is something 99% of the people won't ever be able to say they did. Just enjoy it. No. You had to get these folks the green light on what could be the start of World War III. That's what you call a disgruntled employee before he leaves the job that he currently has. Somebody got to say it, and I'll say it. To me, that's what that is. Why do I say that? Because that's what disgruntled employees do. If they know they got another job or they know they finna leave and they really didn't like this company that they work for, they throw a monkey wrench in shit. I'm just serious. And it's not for the benefit of the company. It's like you stopping up all the toilets. You taking massive dumps in the toilet, stopping them up. You know this your last day. And now the shift that comes behind you got to deal with this nonsense. That's how I'm looking at this situation. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you give these folks the green light to do that? And you know that this guy over here ain't playing with a full deck for real. So when I'm looking at all this information, right? And like any logical person, I'm asking myself, like, okay, let me just sit back and deliberate on what's going on right now. So I asked myself a question. I'm like, why are we even dipping our nose into Ukraine and Russia's business? I understand the thing about allies and we got to protect our allies and we got to be there for them and things of that nature. But this one right here just seems odd. You know, if it was Israel, I guess I get it because it seems like the United States and Israel is synonymous. You know what I mean? But Ukraine? Like, something just ain't adding up to me, right? So, like the good book says, ask and ye shall receive. So while I was just strolling through these YouTube streets, I come across a video by a young man named Richard Wolff. Now, some of you may be familiar with Richard Wolff. Some of you may not. Richard Wolff is an economist out of Boston, Massachusetts. He's been making informative content based on the economy and the positioning of the United States for a decade now that I can see. think the oldest video that I saw from him was like 9 years old. And he had some very interesting things to say as to what's going on the world stage and our position in it. And the things that he's saying really drives home for me the reason why we have an interest in what's going on with Ukraine and Russia and with a lot more. Because we have all been distracted, y'all. We're going to dive into the video and react to Richard Wolff's video that I have to dive into in just a second, but y'all just bear with me. We've all been distracted. We pay attention to what they give us. We like to be entertained in the United States. There's no doubt about it. The juiciest gossip is going to get our attention every time. I'm no different. Honestly, I've been distracted by the college football playoffs. Of course, Alabama done had 3 losses on the season. I'm really hoping that we can get in. But is that the most important thing that's going on right now? Absolutely not. We've been distracted by Diddy. We started off the year being distracted by Cat Williams and a plethora of other things. So I'm not the pot calling the kettle black. I'm just calling a spade a spade. It's easy to be distracted by our media. The way the media spins is faster than your dryer in your washroom. Okay? It's faster than your washing machine on the rinse cycle and the spin cycle. The spin our media gives us is mind-blowing. We don't have time to dive into controversial content because the moment we actually settle into one catastrophic thing, they hit us with another. And it's just not you all. I'm including in there. It's us as a society. Now, here's the thing. Why is the spin cycle so high? Why so fast? What's going on that they don't want us to pay attention to? And this video that we are about to react to, Mr. Richard Wolff from Boston, Massachusetts, I think he's going to explain it way better than I can. All right? Ladies and gentlemen, we are in trouble. This is DEFCON 1 or DEFCON 2 or DEFCON 3. I don't know. It's a DEFCON, man. Listen. Mexican got on boots. Like Ali Sadiq today. Like Ali Sadiq say, Mexican got on boots. I don't know what the fuck that mean, but they do. Like it's about to go down, and we ain't been paying attention. But I'm going to digress right here, and I'm going to let Mr. Richard Wolff explain it a whole lot better than I can. Again, this is a reaction video. Before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with people because these are conversations we have to talk about. We're in a dire moment in our history. We don't really understand how serious this situation is. We don't really understand how serious the situation is, but the situation is very, very serious. And things are changing right before our eyes, but we're being distracted. It's smoke and mirrors going on right now, good people. And I'm being honest with you. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your culture is. I don't care what your creed is. If you are living in the United States of America right now, you need to pay attention to this video because this video right here that we're finna watch, I think that it's telling the story of what's going on behind the distractions. So without further ado, let's get into my friend, my newfound friend, Richard Wolff, on the decline of the U.S. empire. Light your sticks up, pull up, roll up, get comfortable, because we about to go there.
And something you probably already understand. It's that old adage that if you don't like the message, please don't take your anger out on the messenger. I am going to be describing to you as best I can what the situation is with the United States' economic system, which has a name. It's called capitalism. And it is, to give you a hint of where we're going, it is a system in very deep doo-doo. It is in the greatest difficulty that I have ever seen in my life. And you can tell from my white hair that I've been around a while. I never expected to see what I am experiencing. And I imagine for many of you, it is the same, unless you are committed to something my psychotherapist wife explains to me as the problem of denial. Not a river in Egypt, but an inability to confront what it is that's going on, because it's frightening. It's a very human thing to do. It's like a little child who puts his or her hands in front of her face when there's a scary dog in the neighborhood, because she still imagines at age 3 that if you don't see it, it isn't there. And if you don't see what's going on around us, then perhaps it isn't there. And that is something which our political leaders and our cultural leaders and our economic leaders, that's one thing they all have in common, with very few exceptions, namely a commitment to denial. So my presentation today is going to try to break through all the mechanisms of denial that surround us in order to tell you what I think is going on. I'm not infallible. I make mistakes like everybody else, but this is the fruit of a lifetime of observing U.S. capitalism, which I was born in the United States in Youngstown, Ohio. I've lived and worked here all my life. I have never seen anything like the situation we are in now.
I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. He's from Youngstown, Ohio, not Boston, Massachusetts. I apologize about that. That's a fact check on my end. Let's proceed.
They are born usually out of the demise of another empire. They evolve and change over a period of time, running from a few decades to a few centuries, and then they die. They pass away. The most recent one, perhaps the most and best studied, was the British Empire, which, depending on how you want to count, goes from around the 16th century to the end of the 19th, more or less. So 3 or 4 centuries, depending on how you count. And out of the disintegration of the British Empire, literally punctuated by the war, the independence war that swirled around Boston, right where you are, a part of that empire broke away. And in an important lesson, the empire denied that this was building, even though it was building across the entirety of the 18th century. Denied it. And then in 1776, the denial blew up in its face as the colonists here in this part of the British Empire, by the way, a relatively small, relatively unimportant part of the empire, wanted its independence. And a war was fought, which, to the surprise and chagrin of the British Empire and George III sitting on his throne in England, the British lost. Not to be forgetful, let me remind you that in 1812, They tried again and
Mm.
they lost again. And with that, set in motion the disintegration of the British Empire, which ended in World War I. Out of it emerged the American empire. American capitalism across the 19th century resolved certain key internal contradictions, holding them back, most notably the bizarre coexistence in this country of a capitalist Northeast and Midwest and a slave South. That was resolved by the willful destruction of slavery by the capitalists. Remember, the Civil War is the expropriation without compensation of the single most important wealth of the South in this country, the slave. The slave was emancipated and thereby the white master impoverished. The very stark disregard for the sanctity of private property. And capitalism, having destroyed its competitor with enormous violence, took off. Starting in 1870, the United States capitalism had a century of economic growth.
He said something a minute ago. He was talking about the destruction of private property, and in that private property being taken away, the owners of said property began to be impoverished. Now, we don't ever look at it like that because, again, we understand how dastardly and how evil slavery was in those terms. However, that's just what happened. You, I'm a business owner, first, number one. So it can be said that I am a capitalistic person, in which I am. I, I can't lie to you. I can't sugarcoat it. Any person that owns a business, any entrepreneur out there, if you are a head of a corporation, you are a capitalist. Sad but true. Does that mean you're a bad person? No, it just means you're taking advantage of a system. You understand how the system goes and you want to put yourself in a situation to where you can take advantage of these opportunities. See what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, I got a lot of liberal uh, ideologies about myself. You feel what I'm saying? However, if you take away the opportunity that I have as far as gaining employees, I'm hurt. In which he's going to go into a little bit later on because the labor force sucks right now. If you are an entrepreneur in this day and age, right now, as I'm speaking, you are having the same problems that I have. The labor force sucks. No one wants to work, period. It's hard to grow your business nowadays because no one wants to work. People talk this nonsense about Elon and these robots, but hell, man, some of us can benefit from robots because what humans don't want to do it no more. But taking away certain aspects of a certain person's livelihood is going to lead to that person's livelihood being their demise. And that's the point that I'm getting at. Capitalism, in order to exist, had to abolish slavery. Period. Of which we know slavery should have been abolished, but the sharks that was in the water at the time of said abolishment that spearheaded this thing that we know as capitalism, did they have our best mind and interest at the time? I don't think so. I don't think they had. I'm sorry. Did they have our best interests in mind at the time? I don't think they did. They saw what capitalism was. They saw what it is, and they saw what it could lead to. But nothing lasts forever. And just as sharp and rugged as it was to begin, that's just how deadly it's going to be at the end of said regime.
The most amazing thing is if you look at the statistics, crude as they are, especially in the early years, the United States grew uninterruptedly for that century, roughly 1870s to the 1970s. Every decade, real wages of workers were higher than the decade before, even across the Great Depression. Profits grew even faster. So you had this bizarre situation, quite rare in the world, of a capitalism that was able to give rising profits to its capitalists and rising wages to the mass of its workers, with, of course, the exception of those workers with the bad luck to not have been born white.
Mm, stop right there.
Very
Stop right there. Stop right there. Think about it. The automotive industry, when they were booming, that was before the 1970s. What did we have a problem with in the 60s? Inequality, civil rights. We weren't getting the same opportunities as our Caucasian counterparts at that time. No offense to my Caucasian counterparts. This is not a racist statement. I'm just stating the facts. Seriously speaking, the golden age, the American dream. See, back then we were just arguing and we were protesting because the American dream wasn't for everybody. The American dream only counted if you was born of a fair complexion. Stop me when I'm lying. So he didn't make no he didn't tell a fib right there. He didn't tell a lie. He's just stating the obvious. And again, he comes across as harsh, but he's calling a spade a spade.
important that they sink in. Why? Because if you do something like this, if you have a century of economic growth under an economic system like capitalism, it isn't so surprising that you think of the United States as exceptional, because in that regard, it was. If you're religious, perhaps you think God likes Americans better than he or she likes other people. If you're not religious, you will attribute it to who knows what. Entrepreneurship, my professors used to like to say, whatever in the world that's supposed to be. But it was exceptional. And Americans, whatever their other orientations, took on the notion that we live in an exceptional place. And they then really ran with that ball and began to imagine that this exceptionality was somehow inherent, and so it would last forever. It was upward and onward, the American economy, and it would carry our culture around the world to become the world's culture. Our political system would be the model. Our military would push away those backward people who wanted to resist. It became, and I use this word carefully, crazy.
Is he right or wrong? Do we not have those same ideologies today? We have those here. That's why our country is divided the way it's divided right now. We have those here that feel exactly how he feels. And then you have some of us here that's looking at the problems of inequality right here in our own land. And we're looking at those people that's standing on their square saying that this is the best, this is the best country, and this is how God wanted it. We're looking at them through crazy eyes. Like, we're like, what the hell are you looking at? What the hell are you seeing? Is it really and truthfully equal as it was supposed to be intended? Like, no, it's still injustices and inequalities that we have to face. But that certain ideology that was sold to these people way back in the gap before me and you were born, they have a hard time realizing and accepting the fact that those were fairy tales, all to hyper extend and hyper advertise a flawed system. But I digress.
And of course, when the signs began to emerge that this empire, the United States empire, after 100-year rise up, was beginning to show the signs of decline, of peaking, of breaking, it's not surprising that the leaders of such a system with such a history would be deep into denying what had happened,
Mm.
not seeing what was exploding around them.
Mm.
Over the last few days, Americans have been confronted yet again with the level of violence committed every day somewhere in this country by the police against the citizens.
Whoa.
And again, there are people who want to blame it on this or that particular policeman or woman, who will not see that this is a social phenomena. It has been going on for a long time, and it is getting worse.
I don't think y'all ready for him.
It's the same issue. It's this.
Y'all ain't ready. Y'all are not ready for Richard Wolff. When I tell you this dude right here call it out like he called, like, bro, spades are spades with him. I can respect a person like this. It's a social phenomenon. We see the injustices. But for whatever reason, certain people want to put their head in the sand like it's not happening. And it just ain't happening. The truth of the matter is, it just ain't happening to black folks. The police are violating people of all color. Period. But for the sake of satisfying themselves or not being willing to come to the forefront and call it out as being wrong because they are benefiting from said actions, people turn the blind eye. It's something wrong, y'all. And now we're getting to a point to where shit coming full circle. Ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun type of situation. But I digress. I'm gonna let him finish.
Same denial. Okay, what exactly is being denied? Let's begin, and I apologize. I'm going to begin with economics, but that is what I know best, and that is what I have studied all my life. And so if I'm going to be useful to you, I want to share at first what I know best. Over the last 40 years, roughly 1980 to now, we have seen, and all economists of all political persuasions understand this and see it. We all use basically the same numbers, and with a few exceptions, of course, always we come to the same conclusion. Over the last 40 years, there has been a radical redistribution of wealth from the bottom and the middle to the top. And the more top you get, the top 10% have done really well. The top 5%, even better. The top 1%, even better than that. And the top 1/10 of 1%, the best of all. And you know them because in our society, we adulate them. I'm talking about Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Warren Buffett or fill in the blank. You know them. Our culture makes sure you know them.
Mm-hmm.
They became much richer. The top 10% became richer all across those 40 years. This was partly because, the very important that you understand this, it was partly because we changed the tax laws in this country. We relieved taxes from corporations and the rich, and we switched them onto the middle and bottom.
Mm.
It was done by Republicans. It was done by Democrats. It didn't matter who was in the White House or who was controlling the houses of the Congress. The Democrats did it a little less quickly. The Republicans were a bit more intense. Speed varied. Content did not. Even more important than the changes in taxes was the phenomena of the relationship between capital and labor. That is, corporations and business on the one hand, and the mass of people, employees, on the other. As I've told you, real wages went up for a century, 1870s, 1970. Why 1970 do I pick that? Now I can tell you, because that's when real wages in America stopped rising.
Mm.
Absolutely epoch-making change. What is a real wage? It's the amount of money you get adjusted for the prices you pay. So, for example, if your wages go up 10%, you might feel good, but if all the prices you have to pay went up by 10%, you're no better off with a 10% bigger money wage than you were without it because the prices have adjusted. We all know that in economics, so we don't use money wages, we use what's called real wages.
He ain't lying. I own the janitorial company, right? Yeah, I'm the HNIC of a janitorial company. Minimum wage in our country has a federal mandate of being $7.50. Do you think I could get help at $7.50 an hour? My minimum wage, what I start my people off with, is at least $10. Why? Because I know $7.50 an hour ain't gonna get me help. Ain't nobody trying to work for that. It amazes me to think that our leaders in government don't recognize that. See, I'm not naive. I know that they recognize that. I know they know that $7.50 an hour ain't nothing. But for them not to raise it, and it's been $7.50 for forever for me, it's like, what do y'all really think about this? $7.50, man. Do y'all even care if people can make a living out here? You see what I'm saying? And then we are surprised about how things are in this country right now. Again, I think Richard Wolff is on to something. As a country, as a collective, no matter if everybody thinks about this or thinks like this or not, the truth of the matter is, as a whole, we're in denial. Period. We are. The minimum wage is a perfect example of that. We are in denial if we sit here and think that $7.50 is a fair, workable wage.
Wages understood in terms of what it can afford you to buy: goods, services, food, clothing, shelter, entertainment, education, medical care, whatever. Real wages rose. In other words, the money wages workers had from 1870 to 1970 rose more than the prices did. So they really got more stuff that they could afford to buy.
Facts.
In the 1970s, that stopped
Mm.
and it has never resumed.
Ever.
The American working class today, earns, in terms of what it can afford to buy, the average American worker earns now what he or she did in 1978.
Come on, man. Think
Try
about
to
that.
wrap your head around no more real wage increase. For a country that had enjoyed steady real wage rises for a century, this is a traumatic event. How was it handled in the United States? Denial. I won't embarrass you by asking how many of you know what I just said to be the case. How many of you have dwelt in your mind on what it might do to a population used to a rising wage when it is no longer available?
Bro, you gotta think, man. The last increase that we had to minimum wage, I want to say it was like the early 2000s. And it was just by 25 cents. Minimum wage was $7.25, and then they said, okay, we're going to add 25 cents on top of that. And now it's $7.50. But truth being told, the real wage of our country hasn't made any true change since the 1970s. I don't know about y'all, man, but me, I was born in 1980. And for my youth, all the way up until today, I've had this burning sensation inside of myself telling me that, man, something ain't right. This is not the way this world is supposed to be. Growing up in poverty, having to be in the projects, barely being able to put food on the table, barely being able to have adequate clothing, barely being able to afford shelter. Like, this ain't what God intended for us in this world, man. Let's just keep it a bean. Ain't no way you gonna tell me that this is the way it's supposed to be. It can be one way or it can be another, and they chose the other way. Time's up. Bro, it at some point, chickens are going to come home and roost. You can't continue to do people like this for the sake of you getting rich, man. Boy, let me stop, man, because I can go on a whole sermon about this.
There was no discussion at the time or since, no debate in this country. What do we do about all of this? The closest you got were vague gestures in which somebody says, gee, the middle class seems to be fading away, as if this were, I don't know, some sort of cosmic effect, or maybe the result of sunspots or allergies, or who knows what. But an analysis, either of why it happened or of what its consequences were, no, nothing serious. Well, let me tell you what some of the results were. Number one, by far the most important socially, the women of the United States left the home where they had been sequestered for the earlier parts of American history and had to go out and do wage labor en masse. The only ones who had been doing that beforehand were black and brown women. They'd long been doing it because they had to.
Talk to him, Richard.
And the poorest among the whites.
Talk to him, Richard.
But now suddenly, all women, all the wives and mothers had to go out. There was no other way to sustain the fantasy of growth.
And see, I'm all for women's rights. Don't get me started. I look, bro, I love my women. I think women can do, when it really boils down to it, a lot of what men can do. I just don't think they should have to. You see what I'm saying? Again, I'm conservative on one end, but I'm liberal on another end. So I would say I'm a liberal conservative. That's how I describe myself. Me personally, in my perfect world, I would want to be the sole breadwinner for my family. And I would want my wife to focus on making our house a home. That's, to me, I think that if when we're talking about a nuclear family, that's best because I can't nurture like her. I can't make the house all cuddly and warm like she can. I can't cook. I can't cook like her. You see what I'm saying? I can't give the kids the proper the proper what word am I looking for? You know, nurturing. Basically, that she can. So I would rather her intentions and her efforts be there. And truth being told, I think majority of the women feel the same way. Now you got women out here that want to be a trailblazer and want to get out here and do what they do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think we've been manipulated to think in a way to where women think they need to because they don't want to be told by a man what to do. And to me, I think that's some fairy tale stuff right there. Being honest with you, any real man, and I'm this is me, and I know a lot of men like this. A lot of my friends are like this, and they would co-sign what I'm about to say. We don't run shit when it comes to our household. We provide money, we provide protection, and we make sure our territory is straight. But when it comes to the day-to-day operations of what our family is, boy, that's the woman. See, it's similar to a lion. The male lion doesn't hunt. The male lion doesn't see after the kids. The male lion simply walks around the territory to make sure ain't no intruders fucking with his shit. Excuse my language, but that's just what it is. And for the most part, real men out there are the same way. I don't run my household, my wife does. She tells me what she needs, and I provide. Period. I have to ask her what we eating for dinner. I don't tell her we gonna eat steaks tonight unless I'm cooking. Cause if I ain't cooking and I try to tell her what she need to cook in the wrong way, well, I might as well stop and get me something to eat before I get to the house. I'm just serious, man. Like, seriously speaking. But we've been duped into this society, and then you ask why these certain agendas are being pushed. It's not all the time for the benefit of the people. It's for an ulterior agenda to be pushed that we have no idea about.
Of the American dream, of what had been experienced in the previous century. The second most important effect, Americans began to realize that the only way they could participate in further growth of consumption, the way they had been led to believe was somehow inherent in the American experience, besides sending their wives out to work, besides following a career as a worker in a factory, you could now go back to work and be a greeter at Walmart's. But beside that, you could borrow money.
Mm.
In the 1970s, the banks of the United States decided that the consumer to whom they had never lent money before, they would now lend money to. In other words, the credit card, which until then had been American Express in the hands of rich people and businessmen, would now become socialized. Everybody's wallet would be crammed full of plastic cards. Live off them. And so the American working class, from around the 1970s to the present, accumulated debt. We are a debt-ridden society in a way we never were before.
Mm-hmm.
We became pioneers, not in covered wagons going west, but in what we could cram plastic in our wallets. All the growth of consumption, all the growth of consumption in the last 40 years has been based on women's labor, women's earnings, and debt. Families have become much more complicated institutions to survive. If I had more time, I'd go into that with you. We have the highest divorce rate in the world. We put our families under levels of pressure that would be impossible for anyone to sustain.
Mm-hmm.
American women consume more psychotropic drugs than any other population on the planet.
Damn.
Why? Because they are druggies? No, because we put them under impossible pressures, which
Mm-hmm.
blew up the family, since the mother was what held the emotional life of so many families together.
I
And she
just
was
said
now
that.
as exhausted as the husband
I
coming
just
back
said that.
from her hours.
I just said that. Like, you can't have a real functional family with both of the parents stressed out about how they gonna make a dollar. It's impossible. So yeah, the divorce rate gonna be high. You feel what I'm saying? Like, straight up. Like, when you know it's common sense. Period. But now, guess where we at? Bad bitch summer. You see what I'm saying? Just think about it. And then when we look at certain women and they say that, look, man, you know, my man need to pay all the bills, this, that, and the third. They're not they're not coming from a place of what I'm talking about right now. They on some entitlement type shit. Cause again, it's all about living your best life. And you want some shit that's an imaginary folklore that they're giving you through music and entertainment, and it just doesn't make sense. It's just not reality. But we've been systematically put into this position, and now we're finding ourselves in a position to, well, we're not raising our kids properly, and we deep down want to break these generational curses, but it's damn near impossible because of the situation that we've been put into. Period. Everybody's stressed out. Everybody's money hungry. You see what I'm saying? And it shouldn't be money hungry, but we live in a capitalistic society to, well, we have to be money hungry. Everything's going up, and we're not making no more than what we were making 30, 40 years ago. You see what I'm saying? Think about it. Everything going up. Eggs cost $6, milk cost $10. And we still making the same damn thing we were making 20 years ago. That ain't gonna happen. That ain't gonna it ain't gonna make it make sense. Now the wife got to go to work, just like you got to go to work, and she can get a goddamn work husband. You get a work wife. Both of y'all are committing adultery. So now you ain't really gonna look at each other the same way when you get home. Y'all just tolerating each other because it's supposed to be the best thing for the kids, but at the same time, is it? Your whole life is predicated upon a lie simply because the system said so.
Of work. The empire's foundation is beginning to crack. Well, you keep assuming more debt, which the American working class did. It borrowed. It had borrowed with government support for its house. That's how mortgages developed. For those of you who don't know, mortgages were never given to working class people to buy a home until the Great Depression. To get us out of the Great Depression, the government took the step of guaranteeing the mortgages so the banks could lend without a risk. Otherwise, they wouldn't have, because they never did. So the American Homeowner Society is a product of the government, not of private enterprise, which was too greedy and too frightened to ever do it. home loaning. Then the car had to be paid for with loans because working class couldn't afford it. Then the credit card, so you could buy everything. And then in the last 20 years, a new indebtedness, the college student. So by
Man, that man breaking it down, bro. I ain't gonna sit here and lie. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Because man, we just here to wake our people up, man. I'm talking about, when I say our people, I'm talking about good people. I don't care what race you is. I don't care what color you is at this point. This shit's so deep. Well, we need everybody on deck. We need unity. All hands on deck, man, because it's bad. Period. Speaking on this debt situation, they done went to the minutia in trying to get you into debt. Affirm, Clara, Carla, whatever the hell this shit name is. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You can it's Christmas time, right? You want to purchase a gift. Let's say that gift is 200 something dollars. Let's say you want to buy your child a PlayStation for Christmas. You know damn well you can't afford a PlayStation outright, right? Now, you can pay for it and spend $400 right now, but then you have another option that you can click and you can make 4 easy installments of $100. That's another form of debt. Debt. I don't like it because to me, debt sounds too much like dead or death. You know what I'm saying? Like, seriously speaking, it's everything is debt. How can you get out of debt when the whole society that you're living in is based upon you being in debt? Leave it in the comments if you got the answer.
now, the family is dying, floating in levels of debt it cannot support because the underlying wage didn't go up, just the debts. And it doesn't take a PhD in economics, although I have that, for you to understand that if the underlying wage doesn't go up, you can't keep accumulating debt because the time will come, and it's called 2008, and that's why that song is so appropriate, when the credit system exploded. Cracks
Remember
in
what
the
happened in
empire.
2008? Listen. Remember what happened in 2008? The banks that were considered too big to fail had to get bailed out by our government. Remember that now. We crashed. The bubble got too big. People were speaking on that back then. A lot of us didn't understand what they were talking about or what they meant. He just explained it simple enough for a fifth grader to understand.
This system is so committed to inequality that not only did it grow over the last 40 years as wages stopped rising, of course, where would workers' income go? They couldn't grow. Their wages were flat, but they were becoming more productive all the time. The last 40 years are the computer, the robot, artificial intelligence, all of that. Workers' productivity goes up. Workers' wages are flat. Wages are what the employer gives you. Productivity is what you give the employer. If what the employer gives you is flat and what you give the employer keeps rising, guess what? You have inequality. You're taking all your growing output and giving it to one small class of people. Employers are 1, 2, 3% of our population, if that. They get it. Even across COVID-19 pandemic, inequality got worse. And what did we do to the working class after we gave them 40 years of losing everything, their families falling apart, their position in American society, their growing wealth, a kind of affirmation that somehow you're doing better? All of it's taken away. Then we hit them with COVID. Then we hit them with an inflation. And now we're hitting them with rising interest rates. Let me frighten you, if I may, if what I've said hasn't done that job already. There is an example in history of another working class over a small number of years being hit with economic blows on a scale of what's happening here. The example is Germany. And here's how it works. In the second half of the 19th century, as the British Empire is declining, the United States is not the only competitor looking to replace the British. There is another one, Germany. World War I defeats Germany. Britain, with its allies, defeat Germany, throw them out of the competition, wipe them out, impose on at the end a reparations they couldn't possibly pay. The German working class, which had been built up across the 19th century to, to believe it was creating a whole new globe. In German, it's called Das Deutsche Reich, R-E-I-C-H. That's like the German Empire. And it had, territories in Asia, it had territories in Africa, and so on. All that was smashed when the unthinkable happened in 1914 to 1918. Germany was defeated. The empire was taken away, literally. The British took the colonies in Africa away from the Germans and made them British colonies. Everything for them destroyed. It was a trauma for the German working class. It ended in 1918 with defeat. Within 4 years, early 1920, late 22, early 1923, literally a century ago, Germany then experienced the worst inflation in modern times anywhere in the West. In a period of 9 months, the German currency went from 6 Deutschmark to the dollar to 4 trillion Deutschmark to the dollar.
Damn.
Prices doubled over weeks at a time, every hour of the day. Any savings accumulated by a German family, and they were very frugal, were wiped out. 6 generations saving money, had enough money put away to buy a quarter pound of butter. They were done. And 5 years after that, in 1929, the Great Depression hit Germany. It was too much. You cannot hit a working class, even the German working class, which was the best educated, most productive, and most progressive working class anywhere in Europe. No contest. Even that, it was too much. And in 1932, those German people, overwhelmed by what they had been put through, turned around and supported a little Austrian with a black mustache, Adolf Hitler, and you know the rest of the story.
That shit was prophetic. I like now we understand how Adolf Hitler came into power. America, we got to wake up. We got to stop letting the small shit divide us. We got to stop letting these folks just throw wedges in between us about shit that don't really matter. Like, if we're not careful, that shit can happen here. And I think we are so spoiled as Americans to where we think that it can't. I think that we are so narcissistic to where we think that we're better than that. And honestly, if you just look at what that took place over the last 10 to 15 years, we're ripe for the goddamn picking. We are ripe for the picking. The thing is that we are well-informed people, if we want to be. See, I'm big on education over entertainment. I like to be entertained too. Don't get it twisted. I think you need a healthy dose of both. It's balance. That's the key. But at this point, what we don't want to be educated. We don't really want to see what's going on. We want to put those hands in front of our face and think things are going to disappear just because we don't look at them. No, we need to be honest about what the situation is and stop being in denial about it. Seriously speaking. Because if it can happen to Germany in the aspect of what he just broke down, it definitely can happen to us. Because honestly, we're here now. We are. It's getting spooky.
Don't be surprised that we have a resurgence of white supremacy, that we have characters like Trump, that we have all of. We're just living out, here we go, the same sad scenario. Denial, not explaining to people the foundation of what they're assuming, not talking honestly about its disappearance, the cracks, what it means when your empire has that fun ride up begin to be replaced by the much less fun ride down.
Hey, look, I'm gonna kill it right here because I'm already at like an hour and 11, 12 minutes or whatnot, and I don't want to make these videos too long to the point to where people gonna, you know, tune out. Attention span is so short these days, so I want to keep everything to a point to where people can get the information, grasp the information, and stay in tune with the videos. So I'm going to kill it right here, but I'm going to immediately start the part two so I can make sure that both of these videos are out and people can look at both in their entirety. Because I think that this is some information that is very much needed in our society. With that being said, if you made it this far, I hope you got something out of it. Look, man, it's one hell of a time to be alive. I'm excited, but at the same time, I'm spooked too, because shit can go sideways real, real fast, and we're seeing it happen in real time. With that being said, man, I am Keith Daniel. This is KDTV. Until we meet again, good people, be safe, be productive, be blessed, and make sure you look at part two of this series because this is some very good information. We need more people like Richard Wolff, breaking it down in a direct and unapologetic way so that we can truly understand what's going on because we have enough characters and actors out here that's just giving us entertainment and just telling us everything is going to be cool, everything is going to be okay. But we're just like frogs in boiling water, man. By the time we figure out the water hot, it's too late to jump out. So again, people, y'all be good out there. I'll see you on the next video. Peace.